Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Humans were legends. Until their fleet changed everything. Commander Krell huffed, his four nostrils flaring in frustration as he corrected the young ensign. Humans didn't have laser eyes or acid blood. That's just ridiculous propaganda from the entertainment feeds. The IGN Traz shrank back, his bioluminescent freckles dimming with embarrassment. Sorry, Commander. It's just they sound so, well, made up. Kel ran a clawed hand over his ridged scalp. 300 years. 300 years since the supposed extinction of humanity, and already they've become nothing but tall tales and bogeyman stories to scare hatchlings. He should know better than to get worked up about it, but something about the younger generation's dismissal of human history always set his secondary heart racing. Listen up because I won't repeat this again, Krell said, leaning forward in his command chair. The bridge of the Xantar patrol vessel Vigilant Dawn hummed around them, the rest of the crew pretending not to eavesdrop. Humans were real. Very real. They weren't gods or monsters. They were just different, unpredictable. That's what made them dangerous. Triz nodded meekly, but Krell could tell the ensign was just humoring him. Who could blame the kid? In the modern Xantar Union, humans were discussed with the same scientific seriousness as ancient dragons or soul-eating shadow beasts from pre-Enlightenment folklore. Commander, called out Lieutenant Vex from the sensor station. We're approaching the outer boundary of the Crimson Nebula. Nothing unusual to report. Standard patrol route complete in approximately 26 units. Acknowledged, Krell replied, grateful for the interruption. These routine border patrols were mind-numbing, but at least they kept the crew sharp. The Crimson Nebula marked the outermost territory of Xantar space, a beautiful but largely empty region except for automated mining operations and the occasional research outpost. Krell stood up, stretching his 7-foot frame. I'll be in my quarters. Lieutenant Vex, you have the bridge. Alert me if... Commander. The urgent tone in Navigator Pell's voice cut through the ambient hum of the bridge. Sensors are picking up something unusual. Krell turned, mandibles clicking with irritation. Define unusual, Navigator. Multiple objects, sir, large ones. They just appeared at the edge of our long-range scanners. Pell's tentacles danced across the holographic interface. They weren't there one moment and then. Cloaking technology, Krell suggested, moving swiftly back to his station. No, sir, more like they just jumped in from somewhere else. The bridge fell silent. ETL travel was common enough, but to appear precisely at the edge of a border patrol route. That showed either incredible coincidence or deliberate intent. Put it on the main viewer, Kel ordered, sinking back into his command chair. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a distant cluster of objects against the crimson backdrop of the nebula. As the computer enhanced and magnified the image, Krell felt his exoskeleton tighten involuntarily. That's impossible, whispered Vex, echoing the thought racing through Krell's mind. The ships were unlike anything in the modern Xantar fleet, or any known species in the Galactic Consortium for that matter. They had a distinctive, almost primitive design, blunt, functional, with none of the elegant biomimicry that characterized current shipbuilding aesthetics. Each vessel bristled with what were unmistakably weapon ports, and their hulls bore markings in a script that the computer was already struggling to translate. But Krell didn't need the translation. He'd seen those symbols before in the historical archives, in the restricted sections that required his command-level clearance. Sir, Vel said, voice quavering. According to the database, those ships matched the design specifications of human vessels. That's absurd, Trez blurted out. Humans are extinct. Everyone knows that. Krell's gaze remained fixed on the screen, on those approaching ships that couldn't exist. His mandibles clicked rapidly, an unconscious sign of stress that he couldn't control. Well, ensign, he said finally, a grim chuckle escaping his throat. It seems everyone might be wrong. Looks like the legends just showed up on our doorstep. Magnify Sector 7 Alpha, Krell commanded, his voice steadier than he felt. The main display zoomed in on the lead vessel, a massive angular behemoth that dwarfed their patrol ship. And someone get Admiral Paxra on a secure channel. Now, the bridge erupted into controlled chaos. IGN Traz stared at the screen, mouth agape, while Lieutenant Vex rapidly cross-referenced the ship designs against the historical database. This has to be some kind of joke, muttered Security Chief Morta, her scaled fingers hovering over the weapons console. Or a trap. Maybe pirates using old design schematics to throw us off. Krell wished he could believe that. Pirates don't have the resources to build a fleet this size, he said, gesturing to the tactical display. The computer now counted 27 vessels of varying sizes, all bearing the distinctive human aesthetic. Function over form, brutal efficiency in every line. Besides, those designs were classified highest level. Could be a glitch in the sensor array, suggested Navigator Pels, desperation creeping into his voice. Remember the Vorn incident? Half the fleet mobilized because someone forgot to recalibrate the run a full diagnostic, Krell interrupted. But continue tracking those ships. Vex, what does the database say? Lieutenant Vex's eyes, all three of them, were wide with disbelief. Sir, the computer confirms a 96.8% match with historical records of human military vessels from the pre-purge era. But she trailed off, mandibles working nervously. But what, Lieutenant? These ships show significant technological advances beyond what was recorded. The energy signatures are, well, they're unlike anything in our database. A chill ran down Krell's spine, making his dermal plates contract painfully. Humans had always been technological innovators, adapting and improving at a rate that terrified the more methodical species of the galaxy. It was one of the reasons the consortium had deemed them too dangerous to exist. Sir, called out Communications Officer Doctor, I've got Admiral Paxil. The holoscreen split, half showing the approaching fleet, half displaying the stern face of Admiral Paxil. The Admiral's crystalline exoskeleton, littered with stress fractures, never a good sign. Commander Krell, explain this transmission, and choose your words carefully. Krell stood at attention. Admiral, at 7:40 hours patrol time, we detected a fleet of unknown origin at the edge of the Crimson Nebula. Initial analysis suggests he hesitated for a microcycle, human design characteristics. There was a long pause. Your sensor array is malfunctioning. Return to base immediately for repairs. With respect, Admiral, we've run 3 diagnostics. The readings are accurate. We are observing 27 vessels of apparent human origin approaching Xantherspace at sublight speed. The Admiral's exoskeleton cracked audibly. Impossible. The humans were eradicated 3 centuries ago. The purge was thorough. Evidently not thorough enough, Krell said, immediately regretting his flippancy. Before the Admiral could respond, Navigator Pels called out, Commander. The lead vessel is changing course. It's heading directly toward us. On the tactical display, the massive human ship pivoted with surprising grace, its trajectory now a perfect intercept course with the Vigilant Dawn. Are they charging weapons? Krell demanded. Negative, replied Morta, sounding almost disappointed. No weapon signatures detected. But, sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. The Admiral's voice turned sharp. Do not respond, Commander. That's an order. Disengage immediately and return tow. Sir, Vex interrupted, her voice barely a whisper. The translation matrix has decoded their identification signal. She looked up, her tri-eyes wide with shock. They're identifying themselves as the Earth Alliance flagship Remembrance, under the command of Captain Eleanor Reeves. The name hit Krell like a physical blow. Earth, the human homeworld, supposedly reduced to a lifeless rock during the purge. And now ships claiming to be from an Earth Alliance had appeared at the edge of Xantherspace. Admiral, Krell said, ignoring protocol, they're hailing us directly. What are your orders? Do not respond. Each word from the Admiral seemed to physically pain him. But it was too late. On the main screen, the translation of the human broadcast appeared for all to see. Attention, Xantar vessel. This is Captain Eleanor Reeves of the Earth Alliance. We come in peace, bearing critical information for all sentient species of the galaxy. Please respond. Morta snorted, her scales rippling with nervous energy. They come in peace, right? Just like the last time. Krell shot her a warning look. Historical records indicate the consortium struck first. Commander Krell, the Admiral's voice thundered through the bridge. You will maintain communication silence and withdraw immediately. This is a direct order. But Krell couldn't tear his eyes from the tactical display, from those ships that shouldn't exist. His grandfather had fought in the final days of the purge, had told young Krell stories, never in public, always in hushed tones during the deepest part of night. Stories that contradicted the official history. Stories of human bravery, of desperation, of a species fighting not for conquest but for survival. Stories that ended with a haunting prediction. They're not gone, little one. Humans never stay down. Someday they'll be back. And now it seemed someday had arrived. Admiral, Krell said, his voice low but firm, with respect. If we don't respond, they might interpret our silence as hostility. Admiral Paxil's crystalline face fractured further with stress lines. And if we do respond, we legitimize their presence. The consortium protocols are clear. No contact with extinct species. Extinct species don't usually fly flagships into your territory, muttered Ensign Trask, not quite quietly enough. Krell shot the young officer a look that promised later consequences, but privately agreed with the sentiment. Admiral, I believe this situation falls outside standard protocols. These humans, if they are humans, have advanced technology and a fleet of considerable size. They claim to bring critical information, the strategic value alone. You've made your point, Commander, the Admiral interrupted, mandibles clicking rapidly. Very well. You may establish limited communication, information gathering only. Make no agreements, no concessions, and absolutely no invitations into Xanterspace. Am I clear? Crystal, sir, Krell replied, intentionally using the human idiom. If the Admiral noticed, he didn't comment before terminating the connection. The bridge crew stared at Krell expectantly. He took a moment to center himself, feeling the weight of history pressing down on his exoskeleton. Officer Dar, open a channel to the human vessel. Channel open, sir. Krell straightened to his full height. This is Commander Krell of the Xanter Union vessel Vigilant Dawn. We acknowledge your transmission, Earth Alliance ship. Be advised you are approaching sovereign Xanterspace. State the purpose of your presence in this sector. There was a brief delay, surprisingly short, suggesting the humans had already prepared their translation protocols. Then the main screen flickered and changed. The collective gasp from the bridge crew was audible. Standing, no sitting, on the screen was undeniably a human female, Krell surmised from his historical knowledge, with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair that contrasted sharply with what appeared to be a relatively young face. Her uniform was midnight blue with silver accents, bearing insignia that the computer was already attempting to catalog. But it was her eyes that caught Krell's attention, dark, intense, and utterly focused, not the eyes of a representative from a defeated species. Commander Krell, she said, her voice surprisingly melodious to Xantar auditory organs. I'm Captain Eleanor Reeves of the Earth Alliance. Thank you for responding. We understand our arrival must be unexpected. That, Krell replied dryly, would be an understatement, Captain. According to all official records, your species has been extinct for approximately 300 standard years. The human's lips curved upward slightly. A smile, Krell recalled from xenobiology classes, but there was little warmth in it. Reports of our extinction were premature, she said, though not for lack of trying on the consortium's part. Security Chief Morta hissed softly, claws extending instinctively. Krell silenced her with a gesture. Where have you been hiding for 3 centuries, Captain? And why reveal yourselves now? Captain Reeves leaned forward in her chair, a power gesture among humans, if Krell remembered correctly. Not hiding, Commander. Surviving. After the purge, the remnants of humanity fled beyond the reaches of known space. We found refuge in regions your astronomers haven't even named yet. She paused, and something flickered across her face, an emotion Krell couldn't identify. As for why we've returned now, necessity compels us. We've detected something approaching galactic space, something that threatens all sentient life, not just humans. Convenient timing, Morta muttered. Return from the dead with tales of a greater threat. To Krell's surprise, the human captain laughed, a sharp barking sound. Believe me, we'd have preferred another century of isolation. But since the choice was between facing old enemies or certain extinction for all, we opted for the former. Krell found himself oddly captivated by the human's directness. The historical records always emphasized human deceptiveness, their supposed talent for manipulation. This bluntness didn't fit the profile. What sort of threat would drag you back into the territory of those who tried to eradicate you, he asked. The kind that's already destroyed 3 of our outer colony worlds, Captain Reeves replied, her expression grim. We call them the Void Harvesters. They consume all organic matter on a planet's surface, then move on. No communication attempts have succeeded. They appear to view all life as simply resources. A chill ran through the bridge. Krell noticed IGN Traz's bioluminescent spots had dimmed to near invisibility, a fear response. You expect us to believe this? Krell asked, though his skepticism felt forced even to himself. That you've returned to warn the very civilizations that tried to destroy you. Whether you believe us is immaterial to the reality of the threat, Reeves replied. But yes, that's exactly what we're doing. Despite everything, we still consider ourselves part of this galaxy's community of sentient beings. And unlike some species, her gaze seemed to intensify. Humans don't abandon others to genocide. Even former enemies. The barb struck home. The Xantar Union had been among the more reluctant participants in the purge, but participate they had. Captain, I need to consult with my superiors. This situation is unprecedented. Of course, Commander. But don't take too long. The harvesters follow predictable patterns, and our models show them reaching Xantar space within 60 standard days. Her expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, we're not here for revenge. That luxury died with the billions of humans lost in the purge. We're here because we all need to survive what's coming. As the transmission ended, Krell found himself staring at the now blank screen, his mind racing. 60 days. A threat worse than humans. And a human captain offering alliance instead of retribution. Order, sir, Lieutenant Vex asked softly. Krell turned to his crew, seeing the mixture of fear, confusion, and, most concerning, hope on their faces. Send all data to Central Command and prepare a secure transmission drone with full sensory records. If these humans are telling the truth, the Consortium needs to know. And if they're lying, he paused, looking back at the massive human fleet on the tactical display, then we need to be ready for whatever comes next. In his private quarters, Krell accessed the historical archives with his command codes. A holographic display illuminated the dimmed room with an eerie blue glow as classified files from the Great Purge flickered to life. Computer, access restricted archive. Human extinction campaign. Authorization KRZ-97. Access granted, the synthetic voice responded. Warning, contents classified level ultra. Unauthorized sharing is punishable by nerve wipe and exoskeleton dissolution. Krell clicked his mandibles nervously. He'd accessed these files before, but always with a detached academic interest. Now, with actual humans parked at the border of Xantar space, the historical footage took on a disturbing immediacy. The first images showed Earth, the human homeworld, as it appeared before the purge, a blue-green jewel teeming with life and technology. Then came the orbital bombardment. Krell winced as continents cracked, oceans boiled, and billions died in what the Consortium had officially termed species security action. But it was the ground footage that truly haunted him. Unlike most species who surrendered when faced with overwhelming odds, humans fought back with terrifying intensity. The record showed human soldiers, hopelessly outgunned, charging Consortium forces with nothing but primitive projectile weapons and improvised explosives. Civilian resistance cells using guerrilla tactics that baffled the highly regimented Consortium military doctrine. Pause playback, Krell commanded, needing a moment to collect himself. He remembered his grandfather, Vice Admiral Krax, sitting by the hearth during Krell's youth, voice lowered to avoid the household monitors. The official reason for the purge was human aggression, Grandfather Krax had whispered, his old mandibles quivering. But the truth, fear, pure and simple. Humans advanced too quickly, adapted too readily. While the rest of us took millennia to develop spaceflight, they did it in less than a century. Their biological adaptability meant they could colonize worlds that would kill most species. Their sociological adaptability meant they absorbed and improved upon every technology they encountered. Young Krell had been entranced but confused. If they were so adaptable, why didn't they just fit in with the Consortium? His grandfather's laugh had been bitter. Because humans don't just adapt to their environment. They make their environment adapt to them. The final straw came when they refused to accept population control measures. The Consortium Council saw the writing on the wall. In a few centuries, humans would outbreed, outbuild, and outthink everyone else. Computer, resume playback. Present day, Krell commanded. The footage continued, showing the final days of the campaign. Human resistance grew increasingly desperate as their colonies fell one by one. The last organized human military made its stand on a rocky moon called Titan, fighting to the last person to buy time for civilian evacuation ships. Official records claimed all those ships were destroyed, but now Krell wondered how many might have escaped into uncharted space. The most disturbing footage came from the scattered resistance cells that continued fighting even after formal surrender, outnumbered and outgunned. They developed tactics that exploited Consortium weaknesses with uncanny precision. A human resistance leader, her name redacted in the files, was recorded addressing her followers. They expect us to break, to give up hope. But that's because they don't understand what humans are. We don't need favorable odds. We just need a fighting chance. Krell shut off the display, the room plunging into darkness that matched his mood. His grandfather's final words about humans came back to him. Remember, little one, the greatest mistake the consortium made wasn't trying to exterminate humans. It was assuming they had succeeded without a body count. Now, 3 centuries later, that mistake had manifested as a fleet of warships at the edge of Xantar space. The door chime interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Lieutenant Vex stepped in, looking troubled. "Sir, Central Command has responded to our report. They're dispatching the 7th Fleet to our position." Krell's primary heart skipped a beat. "The 7th Fleet is a combat formation." "Yes, sir. Admiral Paxera has classified the human presence as a Category 1 existential threat. All officers are ordered to prepare for possible hostilities. And the human warning about these void harvesters. Dismissed as a deception tactic, sir." Krell turned to the window, gazing out at the stars, and somewhere among them, the human fleet waiting for an answer. "My grandfather used to say that humans possessed a quality unique among sentient species," he said quietly. "Sir?" He called it stubborn hope. The ability to face impossible odds and still believe victory was possible. Krell turned back to his lieutenant. "I wonder if we could use some of that quality now." Vex looked uncomfortable. Commander, speaking like that could be considered sympathetic to the enemy. "Enemy," Krell repeated, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. "Perhaps. 300 years ago, we made humans our enemies because we feared what they might become. I have to wonder if, in doing so, we created exactly what we feared." The Vigilant Dawn's communications array practically melted under the torrent of incoming transmissions. Every government official, military commander, and panicked bureaucrat in the Xantar Union seemed determined to personally contact Commander Krell. His small patrol vessel had become the unexpected epicenter of the greatest political crisis in 3 centuries. "Sir," Communications Officer Dar complained, her vocal sacs inflating with stress, "the diplomatic corps has demanded your presence at an emergency session for the 4th time in 2 hours. The Military Strategic Command wants immediate access to all sensor data. The Historical Verification Committee is questioning the authenticity of our footage." She added with a note of bewilderment, "The religious authority wants to know if humans still practice something called handshaking, as it may constitute a prophesied apocalypse sign." Krell suppressed a groan. "Tell the diplomatic corps I'm maintaining vigilance at a potential conflict zone. Send the Strategic Command everything except our communications with Captain Reeves. Cite Protocol 7B regarding first contact scenarios. Inform the Historical Committee that I'll personally guarantee the data authenticity with my family's honor. And tell the religious authority," he paused, mandibles twitching in annoyance, "that I've been too busy preventing interspecies war to inquire about human greeting customs." "Yes, sir," Dar replied, not entirely hiding her amusement. The Situation Room display showed the rapidly evolving crisis. The Xantar Union had notified the Galactic Consortium, triggering emergency protocols across 17 sovereign species. The reactions varied wildly. The crystalline Paxtholians had immediately sealed their borders. The gaseous Freen had proposed immediate diplomatic recognition of the human remnant. The hive-minded Cuss had fallen into collective silence, their neural networks apparently overwhelmed by the paradigm shift. Most concerning was the Dravkar Imperium, ancient rivals of humanity, who had already dispatched their infamous planet-killer dreadnoughts toward Xantar space. "The consortium is fracturing along historical lines," Lieutenant Vex observed, studying the diplomatic feeds. "Species that supported the purge are calling for immediate military action, while those that opposed it are advocating for diplomatic engagement." "And the Xantar Union?" Krell asked. "Officially neutral, pending full investigation." Vex hesitated. "Unofficially, the military caste is ascendant. War preparations are underway." Krell nodded grimly. The Xantar had reluctantly participated in the purge, contributing ships and resources, but avoiding direct combat roles whenever possible. Their historical guilt was less than some species, but their hands weren't clean either. "Commander," Ensign Traz called from the sensor station. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Xantar's 7th Fleet has arrived, along with observers from 4 consortium species." The tactical display confirmed at -43 Xantar warships had taken position between the Vigilant Dawn and the human fleet. Observer vessels from the Dravkar, Paxtholan, Vine, and Kylox hovered nearby, officially present as diplomatic witnesses, but clearly prepared for potential hostilities. They're creating a containment formation, Security Chief Morta noted with professional admiration. Classic encirclement strategy. The door to the Situation Room hissed open, admitting Admiral Paxra himself. The senior officer's crystalline exoskeleton had been reinforced with ceremonial battle plates, and his eyes glittered with barely contained anxiety. Commander Krell, he acknowledged curtly, I've come to personally oversee this historical anomaly. Krell stood at attention. Admiral, we've maintained the containment perimeter as ordered. The human vessels have not attempted to advance further. Have they continued communications? Only automated diplomatic signals, sir, requesting dialogue. The Admiral made a dismissive gesture. Irrelevant. The Consortium Council is convening an emergency session. Until their determination, we will maintain position and prepare for all contingencies. Krell hesitated, aware he was walking on dangerously thin political ground. Sir, regarding the human mourning about these void harvesters. A transparent attempt to sow discord. Paxdra interrupted. Really, Commander, I expected better from you. These humans appear after centuries, claiming some greater threat conveniently requires our cooperation. The oldest manipulation tactic in the diplomatic playbook. With respect, Admiral, what if they're telling the truth? Shouldn't we at least investigate? Your fascination with human history is well known, Commander, the Admiral cut in coldly, perhaps too well known. Some in the military cast question whether your judgment is compromised. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Krell felt his secondary hearts pounding with indignation, but kept his voice low. My loyalty to the Xander Union is absolute, Admiral. Then demonstrate it. You will take a diplomatic shuttle to the human flagship, alone, and deliver the consortium's terms. Immediate withdrawal to beyond the Crimson Nebula, full disclosure of all human colony locations, and surrender of all military vessels for inspection. Krell stared in disbelief. Those aren't diplomatic terms, Admiral. They're surrender demands. No sovereign power would accept them. Paxil's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Then we will have confirmation of their hostile intent, won't we? The Admiral turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Commander, your grandfather served with distinction, despite his controversial views on the Purge. It would be unfortunate if his lineage ended in disgrace. After the Admiral departed, the Situation Room remained silent until Navigator Pels whispered, Sir, will you deliver those terms? Krell gazed at the tactical display at the human fleet that had traveled unimaginable distances, possibly to warn about a common threat, or possibly to exact revenge 3 centuries in the making. Yes, Navigator, he said finally, but I will also listen to what they have to say. Something my esteemed Admiral seems unwilling to do. Security Chief Morta clicked her mandibles nervously. Commander, that borders on insubordination. No, Krell replied, straightening his uniform. That borders on survival. Prepare my shuttle. I'm going to meet Captain Eleanor Reeves face to face. Krell's diplomatic shuttle approached the human flagship with caution. Despite being deemed non-threatening by Xantar military protocols, the tiny vessel felt painfully vulnerable as it approached the massive human warship. The remembrance dwarfed his shuttle like a hungry predator might regard an offering. Xantar shuttle, you are cleared for docking bay 7, came the calm voice of a human traffic controller. Please follow the guidance beacons. Captain Reeves is awaiting your arrival.